This talk is called Mobile Java with GWT, although I'm mostly going to talk about MGWT. This is like third or fourth time I'm giving this talk, and funnily it was also accepted to Java 1 this year. I was very surprised because it's a talk about mobile, and actually in the abstract I was saying JavaME is dead, so I was surprised Oracle accepted a talk which I was telling, oh, JavaME is dead, and now you can do this to still code in Java. So a little about myself. I'm basically a Java developer. I did some stuff with Flex. Then I realized Flash is dying, so then I moved to GWT, and I really liked GWT because I wasn't really very a big fan of JavaScript. Then I moved to mobile stuff and did some stuff with iOS, later Android. Currently, I'm working at Intel as an Android developer, although this talk is nothing about my daily job at Intel. It's mostly about my previous experience. I'm an Eclipse committer. I organize GDG Istanbul and try to attend conferences. My history with iOS, well, I was a Java guy, so I was happy because I had I tried to learn a new language every 2 years, so I said, okay, why not give a shot and try Objective-C. As you can see from the picture, it didn't really quite work out, but I play guitar much better now. Seriously. So the problem with I was very happy with Java. I was able to use it anywhere before iPhone came out. I could do enterprise development, doing stuff on server or web, doing some desktop applications. I can do mobile stuff on JavaME, although I didn't really was a big fan of JavaME. I just found it very limiting. So and also I could just work on Windows, Mac, Linux, just anything. So moving to iOS was a kind of different experience, and you can see Java was everywhere. There's the toilet paper roller holder. There are some other bathroom accessories you can buy. They're all Java. So Java literally was everywhere. So one day after iOS, Android came out, and now I was back to Java world again on mobile. I could use Java to build my apps, and I was pretty happy, but there was a problem. The market is not all Android. You should always take care of iOS users, and no customer is happy with only an Android app. They all want a iOS counterpart. So that time I was wondering if I can do apps which can work on both platforms, which gave me an idea like, okay, we have the 4 big elements on Android: activities, services, widgets, intents. What about the 5th element, the Webview? It was the time when HTML5 frameworks were popping out, so we did some experiments. Actually, it was very one of the very early versions of Sencha. We did some apps which could work both on iOS and Android. Then we realized the performance on Android was really suffering. Well, that was just too early to experiment some of the stuff, but yeah, it was fun. Most of the talk today I'm talking about will be on HTML5 frameworks, but mostly on GWT stuff. I'll talk a bit about PhoneGap, like also keeping the user experience as native as possible. So is this really a talk about HTML5 on mobile? Well, Mark Zuckerberg said HTML5 is not there yet, so Facebook moved from the HTML5 app to native development. Well, if anyone ever tried the Fastbook from Sencha, you can clearly see HTML5 is working. It was just the Facebook app was not working. Just after that, LinkedIn also moved from HTML to native, but also it didn't like solve their all problems instantly. They spent like more than a year to build a better version of the HTML5 app. So it's not like on HTML5 is not working on mobile. So basically, with hybrid apps, we are teaching new tricks to our old dog. With HTML5 hybrid apps, I'm talking about hybrid apps which we package as and deploy as native apps. So you can send them to the app stores, and people can just download and use them as native apps. And you can just develop it once and deploy it to all application stores. But this is a little complicated, right? You have a native app which is running a full-page browser and hosting a web app, which is not coming from a server. It's already in the native package. So it's just like this Disney logic, which Goofy is a dog whose best friend is a mouse who is a dog. It's really not that bad. Actually, most of the people, it's not fair to ask it here, but when I ask it in other conferences, which is not all consisting of GWT and web developers, you can still clearly see more people have web experience rather than native or mobile stuff. So it really makes sense to use your pre-knowledge and previous experience and build stuff with that. The problem with the web is JavaScript. I really never been a fan of JavaScript, and I wrote a lot of JavaScript. I did a lot of development on JavaScript. I like the language, but come on, it's just troublesome most of the time. One argument is if you're building a hybrid app, native developers will probably say, okay, it's slow and your performance will suffer. But is it really that bad? Are we going to build games or 3D physics, doing some image or sound processing, or just doing this, some lists, some detail pages, some forms, or kind of things like this? And most of the time, most of the mobile applications we are building is just like this. So why not giving a try to hybrid apps? Meanwhile, also the performance is not that bad, even if you are building games or physics, anything else. If you have tried the Angry Birds for Chrome, it's built with gwt, and you can even run the Quake version, which was ported from Java to gwt on your mobile device. All you need is the Chrome beta, and you need to enable the WebGL. You can just see it's working quite well. This was an old device, and I could still get 15 frames per second. The only problem is the mobile version. Actually, this is not a mobile version. This is intended to work on a desktop. So it's expecting to see a hardware keyboard, so you can't use it with touch. But you can see it works. So yeah, I mean, even for games, it might be working. One problem I faced while I was doing hybrid development was the old versions of Android Webview, which is like the Internet Explorer of mobile. Because old Android devices are not getting updates. So if you are targeting an old version, which means you will be facing a very old version of Webview, and your performance will suffer. The nice thing is, with KitKat, the new Webview is Chromium-based, so probably it will get the new updates, and from now on, the new devices will not stuck with old versions, which is something nice. So let's focus on some HTML5 frameworks. I told you I tried building HTML5 apps from very early days. So we start with Sencha. It was good. It had a lot of widgets. Then we moved to jQuery Mobile. We tried Zepto, some other frameworks. But with all those frameworks, I needed to write JavaScript, which I wasn't really happy because I was a Java guy. That was why I wasn't happy with iOS development. Then I thought of why not using GWT. I don't need to promote GWT here. Usually when I'm giving this talk, here I stop and talk about how wonderful the GWT compiler works, how it can just create the magic. You're all GWT developers, so I can skip that part. But the nice thing is, yeah, you can just write Java and it can create a better JavaScript than I can write. So the problem I had was the look and feel was not really looking mobile. And I'm not a really designer and CSS guy, so skinning this web app for Android, iOS, and other platforms could be troublesome for me. So I started thinking about looking for other frameworks, mobile frameworks, which built on GWT. Meanwhile, some people started publishing about how mobile developers are copying iOS icons and look and feel to Android and destroying the platform. Suddenly, it became a huge topic, and even Google started their own design guide. That time, I couldn't stop myself, and I also blogged about that. And that time, I decided, OK, I'll find a really good framework which could make apps look really as native as possible on each platform. I started with GWT Mobile WebKit, which was good, but I wasn't very happy with the look and feel. I moved to GWT Mobile. I think it was, yeah, this one. It was good, but all the applications were looking like they were built for Android, even if it was running on iOS, which was, again, not what I was looking for. I give a shot to Touch4j, which is quite good that time. It was not for free, for commercial. So I skipped that one, but now it's free. So you can take a look at it. It's also nice. Then I end up with MGWT, which was good because it was really quite looking like native. Well, pre-iOS 7 native. It had its own widgets, which was something I used to from my Sencha days. And I found a sister project, gwt-phonegap, which made me easily use PhoneGap, still staying on the Java ground. So meet MGWT. What's MGWT? MGWT is basically a mobile widget library built on GWT. It has native-looking widgets for each platform. It's Maven-friendly, which is something important for me. MVP-ready. Actually, it even has a Maven archetype to create the MVP files needed to work with it. And it comes with, it doesn't come with, but you can use it with gwt-phonegap, which is a nice companion. And if you just Google MGWT showcase, you will see that the showcase runs pretty nice on even old devices. The performance is good, and the UI looks as a native Android app on Android and as a native iOS app on iOS. It has its own widgets. which again looks pretty native. So I decided going with MGWT. How to start? You can get the source code from the repository, or you can just easily download the jar file, or you can use the Maven archetype, the Maven dependency, which I prefer most of the time. To start with MGWT, actually, if you're coming from a GWT background, it's pretty easy. The only difference is you're using an animation helper and building your layout and changing your layout with the help of the animation helper. So for a Java or GWT developer, the learning curve is pretty easy. I tried, well, I would really need to use some other libraries, so I decided to try MGWT with maps at first. I tried the version 2. This was a experiment I did like a few years ago, so that time the version 3 was still beta. So I started with version 2, then moved to version 3. I didn't really need to use any lines of JavaScript. I just need to add the inherit part to the GWT XML and add the library. Then, well, if you're building a native packaged app, you will probably need some native APIs at some point, like geolocation, camera, accelerometer, compass, file system, anything. So at some point, you will definitely need PhoneGap. And you can basically use most of those features via PhoneGap. They just work, and again, all I needed to do was add the PhoneGap Maven dependency and initialize the PhoneGap, which I'm not showing here, but then I can just use PhoneGap object to call the native notification. So instead of popping an HTML5 notification from GWT, I can just call the operating system to display a native notification here. So you can just display something native on each platform. So if you move to real action, that's a real code from a project. I don't know if you can read it all. At some point, my brother had an idea. He said, OK, let's build a social app which people can share their acceleration from 0 to 60. That time, it sounded like a good idea. When I first tried it on myself, I realized it's not. So although the application is complete, we didn't really publish it on the app stores. But here the code does is first it checks if you're stopping, if the accelerometer has a very low speed, which is like you're literally stopping, not going anywhere. Then when you start moving, it gets your coordinates, and when you reach the threshold, it calculates the timestamp difference and says, OK, you moved from this coordinate to this coordinate, and from this speed to this speed at this time. Again, yeah, that time it was like a good idea. The nice thing was, when I built this code, I was really curious how well the performance will be. So I built a native Android app, which I can just make the benchmarking. So I installed this on 3 devices, one on iPhone, one this MGWT version to an Android device, and one native on the Android device. My brother was sitting next to me. He started, actually, no, he didn't. He started the app, but the app starts measuring the time on its own, so you don't need to do anything. It's fully automated. I started driving, then I realized the accelerometer actually is not giving you kilometer per hour. So it didn't really stop at 60 miles per hour. I needed to really speed to make it stop. That's when I realized that's not a very good app. So that time I realized actually it's giving me miles per second, so that's the line responsible for converting it to kilometer per hour. What I'm trying to say here is it was working as good as the native version. So yeah, you can even do such stuff with MGWT, with PhoneGap, of course. The next step, I needed to do some OAuth because we were going to share the score on different platforms. As you can see, you can easily do such stuff. Here I'm using a PhoneGap plugin, which is actually using the child browser to do the OAuth login. And when the user does the login, I can just get the location change on the browser and take away the token. So you can easily do such stuff. It's not, I mean, yeah, you can do this with a little less code in native, but still it's not really hard and you're not really doing anything on JavaScript. So I was pretty happy with those, and you can make use of the existing PhoneGap plugins with just providing very simple JSNI interfaces. Next, what you will need is, of course, MVP. If any of you, when you do something complicated on GWT, you will probably end up with using MVP because things get messy. The problem is, well, MVP is, when using MVP, I'm expecting to see something like this, like, okay, this is my view and this is my controller. So I write my view here and my activity, which is pretty similar to native Android development. But I end up with this because MVP comes with a lot of boilerplate code. And really copying these classes from project to project, because most of them are just staying the same and are really just boilerplate code, was not really something I was happy with it. And at that point, I realized actually MGWT comes with Maven Archetype, which can just create all the boilerplate code for you. So at the end, all I needed to create was one view interface, one view implementation, and one activity for each page, each view of the application, which was something nice, which I was pretty happy with that. Then comes the connecting to backend. Well, I mean, it's the basics of the web. Now you're not going back to the server you are coming from because you are packed with the native app. So you need to have some workarounds. First, I started using Jsonp by calling some JSNI functions. Then I realized actually I can use it with request builder and autobean, which was really, really simple and easy to use. You can just use Jsonp request builder, give your URL. And what I did was, it really helped a lot. I could just use the local storage to cache all my requests and retrieve them just in case the connectivity is not good or while waiting the response from the server. So this is, again, from the same app. Here you can see I'm using the Jsonp request builder. I'm also using the autobean feature, which converts the JSON objects to Java objects magically. And the nice thing was this function was encapsulated in one class. So each view only needed to know about the reference of this class and which method to call. And all the JSON, JSONP, AutoBean stuff was just hidden in this implementation. So neither of my views needed to really know about JSON, JSONP, or how to connect to the backend. So again, this was pretty easy to implement, and I was pretty happy with the result. And as you can see, I could just return some Java objects as my return type. Next, reusing JavaScript. Well, mostly, since you're all GWT developers, at some point you implemented some JSONI method to function, to call some JavaScript functions, or use some existing JavaScript, which is good. It's just you are leaving the safe boundaries of GWT compiler, and now you're there's a chance that you can mess the touch events, which I did miserably, and I'll talk about it later. So I was able to use JavaScript via JSONI. Actually, this is something I most of the time use in my projects, which just wraps the local storage, and you can easily use it in Java without doing something really much. It's just one line of JavaScript code which is hidden in this functions. So my experience with doing something complicated with JavaScript was when I started experimenting with MGWT. It didn't have a swipe panel, a carousel, and I was using that in early days at when I was doing Sencha development. So I said, why not building my own? I know JavaScript. I know how to build JSONI stuff. So I decided to wrap the swipe view from cubic.org, which looked like a good idea, but ended up not so well. Suddenly, the touch events on my project stopped working, but it was like my very early days in MGWT, so I thought, okay, probably the framework is not really working well, so I posted on MGWT groups, and I received some replies. Actually, that's the reply from the guy who is responsible for the framework. So at some point, Daniel offered me to get my project as a zip file and debugging it and telling me what's wrong. Then at some point, we realized the JavaScript I wrapped up is just stopping all the touch events to propagate to MGWT widgets. So basically, what you need to do is just be careful about the touch events, and you can get replies from the MGWT groups if you need help. So next step, I was, okay, I realized I couldn't just wrap the cubic.org's container and make it work on MGWT. So I really needed that help. I realized I'm not that good at JavaScript and finding the problem. So at that time, Daniel emailed me and told me that, okay, the swipe view is is planned for future releases. So if you have time, you can just wait for it. Then I was just going to give the first version of this talk, and finally he said, okay, it's in the repository, so you can see our SMS and tweets. So I was one of the first people who gave a demo on the carousel in MGWT, which I can say, I tried most of the similar components in other frameworks, also MGWT, and this really works well. I really did a lot of experiments, like filling each view with a lot of different widgets. I did like play different videos in each view. So yeah, basically it's working quite native-like, and you can see the scroll is pretty good even at old versions of Android. So they're talking about this in the next room, so I won't dive into details. Probably you can watch it on YouTube since they're recording it. But basically, if you are coming from a jQuery background, you can use jQuery, and what you will get is still writing the same looking code and running it faster. So yeah, I really didn't need to use jQuery a lot, but it's nice to have jQuery available when you need. Skinning, that was a huge problem. When I started building something with MGWT, I was mostly targeting the default theme, so I didn't really have a lot of problems. But at the same time, in our company, another group wanted to build another project, and they really needed a specialized theme for their application. And I didn't really guide them to read the styling guide and create their own style. So they ended up doing with some CSS hacks to change the default layout, and it ended up pretty miserably. So if you need a, well, most of the time you will, if you need a theme for your own app, which is different than the default themes, you can easily create yours, but you should really read the styling guide and start creating your theme from scratch. It's pretty easy. Each component comes with its own CSS file, so what you need to do is basically changing the CSS file, which needs to be changed in your theme. And all you need to do is inject your style when you're firing the application, and it just works. You can skin the MGWT components as in with CSS as you do in HTML. So here again, this is taken from the app I was building, and I'm really not a CSS guy, so I really love to work with designers, so they can just provide me the CSS file, which I can just drop in my project, and everything just magically changes and works. So that's why I really like frameworks which really support this. And we could really do this with MGWT. This is the CSS style for the button, which my designer provided me. And when I just put it in the CSS file for the button, MGWT button, it just changes everything. So yeah, I can just do my own work and don't need to find hacks to change the design. Debugging. Okay, I don't need to talk about GWT debugging since you all know the details. But what I can say is when you move to the mobile device, you're kind of limited, because now you're not able to debug via browser plugins and see the problems in Java, what's failing. So what's nice is you can always do the gwt pre-compile, and you can do remote debugging to see what's failing or what's not really working on the mobile device. Usually, you don't get something very different than your desktop browser. So what I can say, most of the time you won't really need to debug something on your mobile device, as long as you really test it well on your desktop, mimicking the mobile browser. But if you need to remote debug, currently iOS supports remote debugging for JavaScript. You can just add a flag on Objective-C code for the Safari to connect remotely to the mobile Safari, and you can easily debug your GWT JavaScript on your desktop Safari. Something similar will be available with Webview because Webview will also support the Webview based on Chromium will also support the remote debugging. So yeah, I think it's also on the way. So what can we do with MGWT? From my experience, if you're targeting iOS and Android, it works really well. Even with old versions of Android, I was pretty happy with the performance. And most of the time, if you're showing your app to a non-developer, people don't really realize it's not a native app. So yeah, the performance is pretty good. It supports Blackberry, but I didn't really did any experiment with Blackberry. Windows Phone, it simply doesn't work. But what really works on Windows Phone? Okay, jQuery Mobile works, but not fully. The animations and transforms is not working, but other than that, the components seem to be working with jQuery. Actually, the Windows Phone, by the time I was giving this talk at Java 1, I realized actually it's working on the Windows tablets, the MGWT Showcase app. So yeah, probably it will be working on Windows Phone one day. Maybe it's working right now. I'm not a Windows Phone user, and I'm not really planning to use Windows Phone in near future. You can use it on desktop because the browsers mimic the touch events when you click with the mouse. The problem is your app will be looking like a mobile app, which is running on the desktop browser. So what I preferred to do was building the UIs for desktop and the mobile separately. Since I'm using MVP, I can make use of the presenters. So I can only change the views as long as they're like having the same number of components and interactions with the presenter. But with, I mean, not very, very complicated apps, I could manage to do one project to work on standard GWT widgets on desktop and MGWT widgets on mobile. I only needed to rewrite the views because one was using the GWT widgets and the other was using the MGWT widgets. But I didn't really need to rewrite the presenter and navigation and most of the logic. So yeah, you can do that if you really need to do that. But well, most of the time, the desktop app will be much more complicated than the mobile app. So if that's an issue, it can be done, but I don't know if you really need it. So what you can really build, almost anything, as long as you're not really looking for native performance, doing some 3D physics. It comes with a lot of widgets. It has its own lists, pull to refresh, carousels, forms. It's pretty developer friendly. If you know Java, GWT, you can just instantly become a mobile developer. And the nice thing is you can instantly become an iOS developer, which is something nice for a Java guy. You can make use of your current JavaScript. Windows Phone, well, there's nothing much to do or talk about. So that's of the things I want to say, so better I get some questions and yeah. Oh, thanks.